It began on a Tuesday. The clouds parted unnaturally, like curtains torn from the heavens. A crack opened above the Pacific Ocean, wide enough to swallow a continent. Out of it came the first ship, its surface a matte black riddled with fractures that pulsed with dull red light. Moments later, more followed, dozens, then hundreds, each shaped like a mutilated insect, wings curling in jagged angles, claws dragging through the upper atmosphere like talons across glass. The world stopped spinning, figuratively for now. Satellites burned out. Communications died. One by one, cities blinked out from the global grid. People panicked. Governments collapsed into confusion. Soldiers fired missiles. Nothing worked. When they landed, they did not announce their arrival. No demands. No negotiations. They began harvesting. Not resources. Not water. Not metal. People. The invaders moved on foot like nightmares stitched from bone and machine. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their weapons worked on frequencies that scrambled human thought. Entire battalions fell without a single scream. Where they walked, life twisted. Concrete boiled. Trees turned to dust. And still, humanity wasn't finished. Miles beneath the Ural Mountains, a man named Vostok Karski stood at the threshold of a vault no one had entered in over 60 years. His coat was tattered, blood crusted around the collar, and his breath came in shallow bursts. He had fought his way here through what was left of his unit. Only he remained. He pressed a trembling hand to the scanner. It hissed and whirred, calculating, and then finally clicked. The door groaned open. Inside was darkness, and beyond it, something hidden since the Cold War. Something that the world had once built in fear and then buried in shame. The lights flickered to life. There it stood, still intact, still waiting. And as Vostok approached the console, he muttered to himself through cracked lips, "Let's see if you still remember how to save the world." He keyed in the activation code. The console lit up. Far above, deep in orbit, a dormant satellite blinked awake. In a distant chamber, fluid drained from a containment pod. A heart, human but altered, began to beat once more. The secret weapon had awakened. And it was hungry. Deep inside the vault, steam hissed through ancient pipes. Vostok stood back as the containment pod split open. A figure stepped out, drenched in coolant and silence. Not a machine. Not quite a man. The body was human, at least in shape. Muscles reinforced with weaves of a material long classified. Veins glowed faintly beneath the skin, pulsing with synthetic compounds developed in laboratories that no longer existed. Eyes opened, milky, then adjusting to clarity, and fixed on Vostok. "Designation?" the figure asked in a voice that scratched like gravel on steel. Vostok swallowed. "You were called Project Ash." The figure blinked once, no emotion crossing his face. He looked down at his hands, flexed his fingers, and then said, "How long since deactivation?" 61 years. Purpose of reactivation? Vostok stepped forward, holding up a tablet. Grainy footage flickered across the screen. Earth cities burning, civilians vanishing, enemy vessels blotting out the sky. The figure watched in silence. When the video ended, he turned back to the man who woke him. "How many have been taken?" "Too many. Entire populations. They're not here to negotiate." "Location of the nearest hive?" "Kamchatka Peninsula. They carved a nest out of the mountains." The figure nodded. "Then that's where I go." Vostok hesitated. "You don't have a team." "I don't need one." Above the Arctic Circle, the enemy hive pulsed with a low, alien rhythm. It wasn't a base, it was alive. Carapace-like walls twisted from the earth, encased in pulpy tissue that absorbed sunlight and heat. Towers rose like insect legs, scanning the terrain. Every few minutes, a transport emerged from a tunnel and rocketed into orbit. Inside the hive, humans floated in stasis chambers, eyes closed, limbs curled. Whatever the aliens wanted from them, they were taking it slowly, systematically. Then the ground quaked. Sensors shifted, red lights flickered. One of the towers rotated to track movement across the tundra. A figure approached, moving fast. The hive's defenders deployed, six-legged things with jaws that split three ways and arms ending in bone drills. They moved to intercept. Project Ash didn't slow. He slammed into the first wave, fist colliding with carapace. Chitin shattered. The second fell to a strike that snapped bone through its own armor. The third tried to leap from behind, but he spun, caught it mid-air, and crushed its skull beneath his boot. Every movement was calculated, every blow fatal. He reached the hive wall and tore through it. Inside, alarms blared in alien tones. Organic corridors retracted. Defenders poured from the walls. He moved through them like a storm, limbs coated in gore and fragments of chitin. Finally, he reached the central chamber. At its center pulsed a node, pulsing with a rhythm not unlike a heartbeat. The control nexus. He placed both hands on it, and began the override sequence hardwired into his neural core. Back in orbit, several alien vessels suddenly staggered, systems disrupted. Their communication networks buckled. Across the globe, other humans, scientists, soldiers, survivors, watched their screens as alien transports faltered midair. Project Ash didn't just fight. He rewrote the battlefield. But the hive wasn't done yet. From the shadows of the chamber, something stirred. Something larger. Older. Watching. Waiting. And it did not fear him. It rose from the center of the chamber, taller than a man, broader than any tank, its body a mass of hardened plates and twitching appendages. No eyes. No face. Only layers of sensory nodes and something that could only be called intelligence. The air grew heavier. Project Ash stepped back instinctively. Not from fear. From calculation. The creature stepped forward. It moved without noise. Not silent, worse. Its presence displaced sound, bent it around itself. Every breath, every shift of its body, was met with a ringing absence of noise. This was no soldier. It was command. Ash's hands tightened. The override had already triggered across multiple nodes. Alien systems were fragmenting. Power flows disrupted. But this thing, this first mind, wasn't bound to the same systems. It had come to fix what he had broken. They moved at once. Ash leapt. The first mind extended an arm. A sharpened tendril burst forth, aimed for his throat. He twisted midair, letting the spike scrape his shoulder before driving his foot into the creature's chest. It didn't move. Instead, it lifted him. Ash struck its arm repeatedly, cracking through outer layers. The tendril twitched, then fell. He dropped to the ground, rolled, and slammed a forearm into the creature's side. This time it reacted. A howl, low and guttural, rattled the walls. It struck back. A wave of kinetic force hit him like a freight train. He flew through a wall, skidding across organic floor panels that tried to grab him mid-slide. The air filled with dust and spores. He got up. Systems inside his chest recalibrated. Bones realigned. His vision focused. Round 2, he muttered. The first mind emerged, fluid leaking from cracks in its plating. Sparks burst from its side. The override code was still running, wearing it down. But not fast enough. Ash lunged again, this time ducking beneath another strike. He reached beneath his coat and pulled a device no larger than a coin. His last option. He slapped it onto the first mind's torso. The creature hesitated. Then its body convulsed. The device burned bright. Frequencies stored since the Cold War poured into its core, corrupting everything. Ash dove for cover. The creature collapsed seconds later, twitching, then still. He stood over it, chest rising and falling. "This one's done," he said into the comm link. The signal, once silent, crackled. A voice came through. "Copy that. Hive status. Disabled. One node crippled. Multiple vessels falling out of orbit. You've stirred the nest." Ash looked up at the ceiling, now buckling under its own weight. "I'm counting on it." He turned and ran. The corridor behind him began collapsing. As he leapt through a breach in the wall, the entire hive shook and folded inward. The mountain rumbled. The first mind was dead. But elsewhere, others had felt its end. And they were coming. The explosion at Kamchatka marked the first major victory since the invasion began. Around the globe, scattered resistance groups intercepted the fallout in real time. Alien vessels near Eastern Europe began losing altitude. Systems failed. Harvest chambers malfunctioned. In a basement beneath what had once been Prague, a woman named Marin watched her jury-rigged display flash data faster than she could read. Her fingers flew across the console. "Someone just knocked the knees out from under their command net," she said. An older man beside her leaned in. "Did we do that?" Marin shook her head. "No, but I think I know who did." She tapped a window on the screen, enlarging a feed from an orbiting drone still functional over Kamchatka. The image showed a figure, barely human, face obscured by steam, walking from a collapsing mountain of organic rubble. Marin stared. "He's real." Project Ash didn't stop walking until the ground was no longer shaking. He made it 5 kilometers from the wreckage before collapsing to one knee. A gash down his left side bled steadily, though the healing nodes under his skin had already begun sealing the worst of it. He opened a channel. Status report. A voice returned, female, sharp. Signal boost working. You've got eyes on you from half the planet. Whatever you did, it hit hard, but you lit a flare too bright to hide. Ash didn't respond immediately. He stared across the frozen hills. Good, he said finally. Let them come. In orbit above the Amazon basin, one of the enemy's command ships stirred. It had not moved since the first landing. Its design differed from the others, heavier, more armored, its engines dormant. Until now. Inside, the council stirred. They were not biological, not entirely. Housed in semi-liquid containment vats, they projected their thoughts into an enormous chamber of light and heat. Their voices had no language, only intention. And now, they shared one overwhelming truth. An anomaly had been awakened. A weapon built by primitives. And it had killed one of their own. The council reached consensus in seconds. From their vessel, they fired a sequence of pulses across the planet. Encrypted orders bound for every surviving hive, every patrol, every ground unit still active. Find the anomaly. Capture if possible. Destroy if not. They did not send a warning. They did not hesitate. The hunt had begun. In a derelict observatory high in the Pyrenees, a young engineer named Rafi stared through a telescope lens modified with stolen alien optics. He saw it all. The shifting of orbital paths, the reconfiguration of patrol routes, the subtle tilt in their response pattern. They're reorganizing, he whispered. The grizzled soldier beside him looked up. What does that mean? It means we hurt them. And now they're afraid of one man. He paused, then smiled. They should be. The rain fell sideways in what was left of Kyoto. Alien ships had burned through the upper atmosphere, seeding clouds with particles that never settled. Thunder didn't sound the same anymore, more hollow, more distant. Ash moved through the wreckage, his long coat dragging through ash and twisted metal. He hadn't rested in days. Not properly. Not since Kamchatka. His systems recharged quickly, but they weren't infinite. Even he had limits. But he wasn't alone anymore. Word had spread. Not just through radios and cables, but from voice to voice, among survivors, resistance fighters, even scattered remnants of government cells hiding in bunkers. Someone was fighting back. And winning. He met her in the ruins of an old metro station, beneath layers of collapsed streets and overgrowth. She wore salvaged armor, her rifle slung low, her eyes sharp. I don't believe in stories, she said. Ash said nothing. But I do believe in results. You knocked out the hive in the east. That alone gets you 10 minutes of my time. Ash raised an eyebrow. What's your name? She hesitated. Call me Fun. All right, Fun. I need a lab. Something with deep system access. Not surface junk. Something old. Fun studied him. You want old grid? That's right. She leaned back against a wall, arms crossed. It's buried under 6 levels of slag, but we've got a line on one access port. Used to be under a tech campus before they bombed the city. Take me there. She glanced upward, where faint tremors rattled the ceiling. We go now, they'll spot us. They've rerouted half their aerial fleet. You've got something they want bad. Ash nodded. That's the idea. Above them, an alien scout vessel hovered silently through the ruined towers. Its sensors swept in broad arcs, registering heat, sound, pressure. It paused. A flicker, barely traceable, beneath the ground. The vessel shifted position, hovering lower. From behind a collapsed building, a resistance fighter fired a decoy flare, drawing the ship's attention. It followed. Fun and Ash dropped into the old utility corridor and moved fast. The deeper they went, the more interference blocked alien scans. They found the access point 10 minutes later. An old interface sealed with both physical locks and encryption. Fun began cutting through. Ash stood watch. Then he felt it. A presence. He turned just in time to see a form drop from the ceiling. It wasn't one of the standard drones. This one moved faster, limbs thinner but more jointed. Its torso pulsed faintly with violet light. A new unit. A hunter. It struck first, claws raking across Ash's chest. He staggered, caught off guard. Fun shouted, firing her rifle, but the rounds barely slowed it. Ash grabbed the creature, lifting it with both arms, and slammed it into the wall. It responded with a shriek, not from pain, but as a signal. More would come. He drove his elbow into the thing's skull. Once. Twice. On the third strike, the glow in its chest went dark. Silence returned. Finn opened the final seal. The access panel hissed and retracted. "You all right?" she asked. Ash nodded, though his shoulder bled. She stepped aside. "Whatever you're looking for better be worth it." Ash entered. Inside were rows of old servers, coated in dust but still humming faintly. He approached the main console, his fingers moving across the keys. Finn watched from the doorway. "What is this place, really?" Ash didn't look up. "This is where we stored the plans for Phase 2. She frowned. "Phase 2 of what?" He paused, then answered. "Me." The lights flickered in the underground vault as power surged through systems untouched in over half a century. Dust shook loose from the rafters. Old fans whirred to life. Static rolled across screens that hadn't blinked in decades. Finn stood by the door, weapon ready, watching the shadows like they might grow teeth. Ash worked the console with a kind of fluid familiarity, keycodes, bypass strings, neural inputs. He wasn't just remembering. It was instinct. His mind wasn't entirely his own. Not anymore. "This facility was shut down before the first wave hit," he said. Finn took a cautious step closer. "Why? Seems like the kind of place we could have used." Ash stopped typing. "Because Phase 2 scared the people who built it." He brought up a schematic, one that filled the screen with blueprints, energy profiles, DNA chains wrapped in artificial sequences. Finn stared. "That's not just a weapon. No, it's an upgrade. Decades ago, Phase 1 created him. A human pushed beyond limits, fused with experimental systems, armored from the inside out. Strong, fast, precise, but not scalable, not controllable. Phase 2 is different. It wasn't just about creating soldiers. It was about transforming humanity itself. Genomic shifts, cognitive synchronization, collective awareness across enhanced hosts. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. They buried it. But now, with the enemy adapting and evolving faster than anything Earth could counter, it was the only card left to play. Ash scanned the database. Most of the prototypes had been destroyed, but 2 remained, unactivated, stored deep in cryolock beneath the Alps. He pinged the location, linking coordinates to resistance outposts still operational. "We need retrieval teams," he said. Finn raised a brow. "You're planning on waking more like you?" "Not like me," he replied. "Better." Far above them, in orbit, the Council intercepted the ping. The transmission lasted only a fraction of a second, but that was enough. The enemy adjusted again. A new fleet detached from the command vessel. Smaller ships, fast and armed for deep penetration, descended toward the Alps. The Council no longer wanted containment. They wanted extinction. Outside the lab, motion sensors triggered. Finn checked her screen. "They found us." Ash closed the console. "Then we go." As they ran back through the corridor, the air grew thick. Alien forms dropped from the ceiling. 2, 3, then more. Finn opened fire. Ash moved like a hammer, breaking anything that got too close. One creature lunged for fun, but Ash caught it midair and drove it headfirst into the steel floor. The ceiling buckled. "We can't fight them all," Finn shouted. Ash looked upward, scanning structural supports. "No, but we can bury them." He slammed his fist into a pillar. Again. Then again. Cracks spread. Finn ran ahead as debris began falling. They dove through the exit tunnel as the entire structure collapsed behind them, sealing off the lab and everything inside it. "For now." Finn coughed, covered in dust. "You always leave explosions behind?" Ash helped her up. "Only when I have to." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "So what now?" He glanced at the sky. "We reach the Alps before they do." The wind howled through jagged cliffs as Ash and Finn climbed the final ridge. Snow whipped against their faces, masking the distant rumble of engines. The peaks around them looked dead, stripped of life by decades of orbital burns and acid rain. But beneath the ice, something still pulsed. Finn dropped behind a boulder and scoped the valley below. "There," she said, pointing to a half-buried tower poking through the snow. "Old research facility. Looks dead from above." Ash scanned the perimeter. "They'll be here soon." She didn't ask how he knew. By now, she understood. They descended quickly. The ground was slick, but Ash moved like it didn't matter. The entrance hatch was sealed with frozen metal and warped bolts. He pressed his palm to the surface. Recognition codes activated. The door hissed, then groaned open, releasing air stale with ancient chemicals. They slipped inside. The interior was mostly intact, walls lined with dormant servers, glass tubes running the length of the corridor. each one filled with shadowed figures in deep suspension. Frost clung to every surface. Finn stepped carefully. These the prototypes? Ash nodded once. Final versions. Never deployed. She stared at them. And you want to wake them? No choice. Far above, the enemy's strike force entered the atmosphere. No fanfare. No light show. Just cold, perfect descent. Each vessel aligned with the facility's position. Inside one of them, the council observed through neural links. The one called Seer had calculated the probabilities. If the vault opened, their war might shift in ways they couldn't model. The creatures inside weren't just threats. They were catalysts. The order was simple. Erase the mountain. Ash activated the main control panel. Lights flickered. Tubes hissed. Fluid levels adjusted. Inside the largest chamber, the first prototype stirred. Finn stood back. What kind of people are they? They volunteered, Ash said quietly. Long ago. Knew they wouldn't wake unless the world truly needed them. The pod opened. Out stepped a woman, tall, expression unreadable, skin laced with circuitry like fine veins of metal. Her eyes scanned the room and locked onto Ash. You're the signal, she said. I'm the reminder, he replied. She nodded once. Then we begin. Above, the lead enemy vessel opened its bay. A weapon dropped, no guidance system. Just mass, heat, and pressure. A mountain crusher. Inside the vault, alarms blared. Finn ran to the console. Impact in 15 seconds. Ash turned to the prototype. Can you stop it? She stepped forward, palm glowing with stored energy. Not alone. Ash looked to the second chamber. Finn hesitated, then slammed her hand on the activation panel. The second pod hissed. Another figure emerged, this one broader, eyes blazing with kinetic charge. The first prototype raised her arm. Ash and the second followed suit. Together, they unleashed a surge of energy that tore upward through the ceiling, cracking stone and steel alike. The sky above split, and the falling weapon shattered midair. Shockwaves rolled down the valley. Ash staggered, then grinned. They're awake. The clouds over Europe churned with static as the enemy fleet descended in force. No more subtle patrols. No more surgical strikes. This was full commitment. Total erasure. The mountain range below bristled with power, their target clear. But the three figures standing at the base of the vault did not retreat. Ash, the first prototype, and the second, now called Mara and Kor, stood side by side. Finn watched from cover near the ridge, adjusting an old transmitter, relaying the scene across every resistance channel left. The footage was raw, unfiltered. The world needed to see this. Mara raised both arms, and the air began to hum. It wasn't just energy she summoned, it was resonance. A pulse that disrupted the enemy's formations, desynchronized their coordination. Ships veered off course, collided. Others froze midair. Kor moved next, vaulting skyward without propulsion. His fists met the nearest vessel with crushing force. The craft tore in two, the explosion scattering fire across the clouds. Ash followed, launching himself onto a nearby cruiser. He ripped through hull plating, disabling engines, sabotaging its core. The ship spiraled out of control, crashing into the cliffside with a howl of twisted metal. They weren't just fighting. They were rewriting the rules. The Council watched from orbit. None of their simulations accounted for this. Humans had no right to possess power this precise, this chaotic, this devastating. Their control was slipping. For the first time since the invasion began, they issued a recall. Retreat. The signal spread through the alien forces like a ripple. Retreat. 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 And still, Ash stood atop the ruined wreckage, his hands scorched, blood dripping from wounds that barely registered. Behind him, Mara and Kor stood unshaken. The ships pulled back, vanishing into the upper atmosphere. Silence followed. Then a single voice, Fun, through the transmitter. They're running. Cheers broke out across old resistance stations. Static-choked radios filled with voices shouting, crying, laughing. For the first time, humanity had struck back hard enough to make the enemy afraid. Ash returned to the vault entrance, where Finn waited. She looked at him, covered in ashen cuts, still breathing, still steady. So, she asked, what now? Ash looked to the sky, then back to her. Now we rebuild. But not just our cities. Finn tilted her head. What else? Ash glanced at Mara and Kor. Our place. Above, the stars seemed distant again. But the enemy wasn't gone. Just wounded. Watching. Waiting. And Earth was no longer alone. It had champions now. Not from another world. From this one,